Good morning, all of you. Today we will discuss the cryptography. It means like that symmetric and asymmetric encryption. What is the cryptography? Study. Cryptography is the study of the secure communication techniques that allow only the sender and the intended recipient of a message to view its contents. This term is derived from the Greek word kryptos, which means hidden. When transmitting electronic data, the most common use of the cryptography is to encrypt and decrypt email and other plain text messages. The simplest method uses the symmetric or secret key system. Here, data is encrypted using a secret key, and then both the encoded message and secret key are sent to the recipient for the decryption. There are two mainly types of the cryptography are there. One is symmetric key or asymmetric key, and we will go. There are the two main forms of the data encryption used today: symmetric encryption or asymmetric encryption. Every day when you are using your web browser, responding to emails, submitting website forms, and other activities, symmetric and asymmetric encryption processes are happening. It is very important to understand what are the differences between the symmetric and asymmetric encryption and how these processes work in the everyday secure transfer of the communications. And what is the symmetric encryption? Symmetric encryption is a widely used data encryption technique whereby data is encrypted and decrypted using a single or secret cryptographic key. Specifically, the key used to encrypt the plain text, the data's pre-encryption or post-encryption state, and decrypt ciphertext, the data's post-encryption or pre-decryption state. But how it will work? That is very important. How does the symmetric encryption will work? Here in diagram you can see there are sender and receiver. In sender side there is a encryption server, or receiver side decryption server there. Sender will send the plain text and it will encrypt using a secret key. Using a secure channel, data ciphertext is sent to the receiver, and receiver side using the decryption server and secret key, receiver will decrypt the data and it will use. Basically, two terms are used here: stream ciphers and block ciphers. Encrypt a message digits or letters one at a time. Block ciphers encrypt a group of bits as a single entity, inserting the plain text to make it a block size multiple. 64-bit blocks are widely used. And symmetric encryption is one of the most widely used encryption technique and also one of the oldest. What is the goal of the symmetric encryption? Is to secure the sensitivity, secret, or classified information. It is daily used in many major industries like the defense, aerospace, banking, healthcare, and so many like that applications or industries. And how it will work, we already discussed. In this case, symmetric encryption works by using either a stream cipher or block cipher to encrypt and decrypt data. A stream cipher converts plain text into ciphertext one byte at a time, and a block cipher converts entire units or blocks of plain text using a predetermined key length, such as 128, 192, or 256 bits. Senders and recipients using symmetric encryption to transfer data to each other must know the secret key to it. In the case of senders, encrypt the data they intend to share with the recipients. And in the case of the recipients, decrypt and read the encrypted data the senders share with them, as well as encrypt any necessary responses. Some examples we also discuss here. One very important example is this data encryption standard, DES. Second example is triple data encryption standard, triple DES. And next one is advanced encryption standard, AES. International data encryption algorithm, IDEA, TLS, SSL protocol. It means secure socket layer. TLS means transfer layer security, as well as its predecessor, Secure Socket Layer (SSL), uses symmetric encryption. TLS SSL uses not only symmetric encryption, but both symmetric and asymmetric encryption to ensure the security of the client server sessions and the information exchange within them. And some advantage also there. For example, one example is security. Security is a very important part is there. Symmetric encryption algorithms like AES take billions of the years to crack using the brute force attacks. Second example advantage is this speed. Symmetric encryption, because of its shorter key lengths and relative simplicity compared to asymmetric encryption, is much faster to execute. Third advantage is industry adoption and acceptance. Symmetric encryption algorithms like AES have become the gold standard of data encryption because of their security and speed benefits, and as such have enjoyed decades of industry adoption and acceptance. Some disadvantage also there for the symmetric key. What are the disadvantage? Main disadvantage of symmetric encryption is its use of the single secret cryptographic key to encrypt and decrypt information. Well, if this secret key is stored in an insecure location on a computer, then hackers could gain access to it using software-based attacks, allowing them to decrypt the encrypted data and thereby defeating the entire purpose of the symmetric encryption. Now come to the asymmetric key. What is the asymmetric key? What is asymmetric encryption? Unlike symmetric encryption, which uses the same secret key to encrypt and decrypt sensitive information, asymmetric encryption, also known as public key cryptography or public key encryption, uses mathematically linked public and private key pairs to encrypt and decrypt senders and recipients' sensitive data. As with symmetric encryption, plain text is still converted into ciphertext and vice versa during encryption and decryption, respectively. The main difference is that two unique key pairs are used to encrypt data asymmetrically. How does asymmetric encryption works? There are sender and receiver. Plain text is sent using the public key, encryption is applied, encrypted text is sent using the decryption is there using the private key. After the plain text is sent, recipients will use it. For example, here is a simplicity example of the asymmetric encryption. If, for example, C, the sender, and J, the recipient, want to continually send a confidential file back and forth to each other, C and J will give their unique and respective public key to each other. C will then use J public key to encrypt the file, since it is intended for J only, and send the file to J. Upon recipient of the file, J will use her or his private key, keywords private, meaning no one else other than the J knows it, to decrypt the file and access its contents. No one other than J, not even C, can decrypt this file because no one other than J knows J's private key. The same process applies when J wants to send the file back to C. J ties it to C's public key and C uses her private key to decrypt the file. In this way, this is a process of the asymmetric encryption work. Some examples of the asymmetric encryption is also there. One is reversed Samir Edelman, RSA. Second one is digital signature standard, DSS, which incorporates the digital signature algorithm, DSA. Another example is elliptical curve cryptography, ECC. The Diffie-Hellman exchange method. And last one is TLS SSL protocol. In this case, the TLSSL uses asymmetric encryption to establish a secure client-server session, while the client and server are generating symmetric encryption keys. This is known as TLS handshake. After the TLS handshakes is complete, the client-server session keys are used to encrypt the information exchanged in this session. And DSS, which incorporates the digital signature algorithm, DSA, is the perfect example of the asymmetric digital signature authentication. Diffie-Hellman, one of the cryptography greatest breakthroughs, is a key exchange method that two parties who have never met can use to exchange public and private key pairs over public in secure communication channels. And some advantage also there: key distribution not necessary, exchange of private key not necessary, digital signature message authentication. It means digital signature message authentication. It means with asymmetric encryption, senders can use their private key to digitally sign and verify that a message or file originated from them and not an untrusted third party. Disadvantage of this also there. What is the disadvantage? Disadvantage is this: the main disadvantage of the asymmetric encryption is that it is slower than symmetric encryption because of its lower key lengths. Not to mention that asymmetric encryption calculations tend to be much more complex than their symmetric counterparts. And some differences also there. For the key differences also there. In symmetric key encryption, it only requires single key for both encryption and the decryption. In case of the asymmetric key encryption, it requires two keys, one to encrypt and the other one to decrypt. In case of the symmetric key encryption, the size of the ciphertext is same or smaller than the original plain text. In case of the asymmetric key encryption, the size of the ciphertext is same or larger than the original plain text. These are the main differences. Another difference in case of the symmetric key encryption is encryption process is very fast. But in case of the asymmetric key encryption, the encryption process is slow. In case of the symmetric key, it only provides confidentiality. In case of the asymmetric key, it provides confidentiality, authenticity, and non-repudiation. In case of symmetric key, it is used when the large amount of the data is required to transfer. When small amount of data is transferred, you will use the symmetric key. And one important difference between the classical cryptography and modern cryptography. Where we will go to the classical cryptography, for making ciphertext, manipulation is done in the characters of the plain text. While in case of the modern cryptography, for making the ciphertext, operations are performed on binary bit sequence. In case of classical cryptography, the whole of the ecosystem is required to communicate confidentiality. In case of the modern cryptography, here only the parties who want to execute secure communication possess the secret key. These are the weaker as compared to the modern encryption in case of the classical cryptography. In case of the modern cryptography, the encryption algorithms formed by this encryption technique is stronger as compared to traditional encryption algorithms. In case of the classical cryptography, it believes in the concept of the security through obscurity. In case of the modern cryptography, its security depends on the publicly known mathematical algorithms. This is a how you will use the